Welcome to Esoteric Lectures. Thank you for joining us for another episode. Today we're going to be discussing events in a cycle. We'll be breaking down what we see in a cycle and, of course, the occult and esoteric perspective that we have of what a cycle is and how it relates to events that have gone on in history in present and past time. Of course, I'm joined by Johnny Midnight. How are things going with you, Johnny?
Wonderful, wonderful. Tonight we are going to be talking about the events that are ever increasing in not only intensity but in frequency that are ushering in the new age of Aquarius as we are currently enjoying the age of Pisces. If you don't like how things are going right now, well, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah, that's the truth. We have a lot more events that are going to be transpiring themselves into our society pretty much every day, and we'll be going into that. So we're going to start off by going in straight into the pit, and we're going to get straight into the meat and bones of what this is all about. We should start off by first saying that, again, in any episode that we do, this is our perspective of what we see through our own research and what we have studied. It is not the absolute definite end-all be-all, but there's a lot of very strong evidence to point towards our statements. So with that housekeeping out of the way, today, of course, is going to be 9/11. And that event, of course, was very significant, and it does tie into the cycle. And when you look into the esoteric and occultic research, whatever you can find out there, because a lot of it's disinformation, a lot of it is just to lead you around a rat race to say, well, somebody else, in some other place did it. It's occultic and it's esoteric, and it's definitely occultic. What happened that day. And we could spend the next 10 years breaking this down because it is so involved and it's so completely beyond what people in YouTube land will say that it was some kind of directed energy weapon or something like that. This is above and beyond that. It is occultic, it is metaphysical, it is quantum, and it is what they call quantum entanglement.
And quantum entanglement is the fracture of reality. Got to remember that.
Yeah, and when you look at things like chaos theory and certain subjects like that, that all ties into this as well. We're not going to get into that because I don't fully understand how that works, so I couldn't give a accurate explanation of that, but I understand the concept behind it. You see, in quantum entanglement, you have what Einstein called spooky action at a distance, which means that basically, let's say on one side of the universe, you have something going on, like an atom or a particle. On the other side of the universe, that atom is directly interlinked or tied with that atom, and it's sending signals back and forth. The reason why it's spooky is because Einstein could not understand how one particle could communicate with something in a completely different dimension or alternate reality, if you want to say that, and how they actually communicate with each other. This also ties into what they call the observer effect. When you look at something, the atomic or molecule particles change when you observe them. That is how deep this goes. The fact that when we look through the observer effect as a study, the fact that a human, or the fact that these particles actually know when a human is looking at them, that's how deep this goes.
Okay, so Element, what you're talking about is basically Schrodinger's cat experiment. I don't know that the cat is in this box until I reveal the reality of a cat being alive in this box. Before the lid is opened, the cat does not exist. In my perspective. But on a subatomic perspective, did it exist either? Well, there again, we're talking about chickens and eggs. Exactly. What came first? So, could you send a transmission from 20 years in the future, somebody here in 2018 at the time of this recording, and via subatomic means communicate with that person? That's what we're talking about.
I called it spooky action at a distance. Apparently, apparently it freaked him out so much that he didn't understand this because of that realization, Johnny, that you just mentioned. These possibilities, you know, of how this stuff begins to manifest itself. You know, how do we find this out? How do we know? How can we even begin to experiment such a possibility? And the reason I believe why it's so complicated is because it has to do with quantum entanglement. Let's say, now, for my very, very, very limited understanding of quantum entanglement, and I mean very limited, my baby block playing with Legos A, B, C, D, E, F, G understanding of freaking quantum entanglement, because it has to do with quantum mechanics and quantum mathematics, which I don't understand. How the fact quantum entanglement, if anybody has ever seen the movie Event Horizon, where a ship was sent into an alternate dimension, into hell, and also from the movie that came out recently on Netflix called The Cloverfield Paradox, a woman ends up getting entangled in the machinery in the side of the ship, as in literally her body was mended with machines. That is quantum entanglement, because when you enter in a different dimension, the physics work differently. And when you enter in the dimensions of hell, the physics are that of chaos.
Right.
So you're not going to have stability, you're going to have chaos.
Time and space mean nothing as the way you perceive it here in the prime material reality. But, you know, in another dimension, they operate on a different level and frequency.
Yeah, exactly.
So there has
very
to
much
be some
like
kind of interface for the two to actually understand each other.
Yeah, those I think would be chaos particles. Particles that are, and again, my very baby limited understanding of this, particles that are trying to exist in a realm of chaos, that try to figure out a way to mend with each other, that end up not going right, very much like a cancer cell that mutates itself. That would be that, a cancer cell would be that of an atomic particle trying to figure out how to join itself to create matter or substance in a chaotic realm is not going to work right, because it's a chaotic realm and it's entangled improperly. So you would have things like, you know, a woman in this Cloverfield paradox entangled in machinery because they entered into a dimension of chaos and hell, and the particles and the makeup of reality interfaces differently than it would in our reality. But the thing is, and now we're going to get into 9/11, this is why this is such a complex thing, because it has so many different incorporations of quantum mechanics and quantum physics trying to actually get down to the brass tacks of what happened. And so we live, as we have described in previous hangouts, a realm of hell or chaos, as we know from Johnny and I have discussed through the Gnostic information. It is a world of entropy and chaos. So we do, in some respects, have the makeup of, and it's just so happens that it's actually 9:11 p.m. as I'm saying this right now.
Yeah, it is.
That, you know, we do exist in a realm of chaos, and we do see chaotic events like 9/11. Johnny, what do you think, as far as 9/11 is concerned, how this ties into the cycle from your understanding?
Well, we have to back it up a little bit. We have to back it up into the infamous year 1945, where a lot of energy was expended on the Earth. So, element. We live in the age of Pisces. If you really want to say we enjoy the age of Pisces, around 1945, events happened. Okay, events happened to trigger more events, which would move the cycle of the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. I'm not saying it, dude. You do it. Go ahead. What happened in 45?
What particularly with what happened with 45? Well, how can I explain this in a way that people might understand? Because this, Johnny and I have been looking into this quite heavily to some degree about how this manifested itself and what we believe Hitler was actually trying to do.
Ooh, you said Hitler.
Yeah, exactly. I think what we believe is that when you look at the occultic stuff that Hitler was working on, and specifically the Ahnenerbe, which was the occult paranormal division of the Nazi Party or Hitler's army, they were experimenting in deep level occultic practices of all various shapes, forms, and sizes, and other dimensions. One particularly from the UFO researchers have come to know as the Vril craft. The Vril craft were basically spaceships that were created by rocket scientists like Heinrich Himmler was involved in that, I'm pretty sure. They were behind the research and the development of those kind of craft, we believe.
Also,
And
America's very own Werner von Braun. You know, he was one of the
yeah,
jet propulsion technologists. Yeah.
we believe that these craft were not used as a form of warfare against humans as much as they were involved in warfare against what the Ahnenerbe was involved in, which was a form of paranormal, other dimensional, otherworldly type of involvement. We believe that Hitler, through his occultic understanding and through his research, and also through the turn of events beyond that, otherworldly, other dimensional influence, possibly, definitely, that led to the understanding that there was a realm, which is hell, that they understood, that they knew how to get there and they wanted to get there. The purpose for which is unknown. We don't know why he wanted to go there, but we believe, you know, he wasn't playing with occult stuff for nothing. He was trying to figure out how to get there through the occultic and scientific research that they were doing.
And as you'll also see in some of the, schematics that we're going to show of Vril craft, they were called things like the Jaeger, the hunter, and they were brimming with weaponry. So this was not a peaceful, charitable journey that they were trying to go on. My supposition is that Hitler wanted to invade the Heil through violent means, through force. Whether or not he wanted to break the barrier between the Heil and the prime material reality, also known as the Horos, so that we could all ascend freely and easily, or whether or not he wanted to take it over, that I don't know.
It also could be that he was forced into that position, you know, just as a possibility. We don't know. That's the thing. We have to come up with, you know, just from Johnny and I's research into this, we've been trying to figure out why. We haven't come up with anything that makes any sense. But he did it. And so when that event happened, we believe that that was a huge turning of events. The thing that you have to understand as well is that war, when people go to war, all wars are occultic wars. They all are occultic wars. They're not just, you know, people shooting each other and who gets to claim what turf. It's so beyond that, man. That's why you have this, you know, people like the CIA developing paranormal divisions like remote viewing. That wasn't just some kind of psyop. They really were into that stuff because they were, when they go to war, war is hell. That's why all of the soldiers that go to war say it was hell. It was like hell on earth. If you could smell it, that's what hell would smell like. They all make references. Any of these people that have gone to war always make reference to hell because that is what it is. It literally is, in my belief, the bleeding through of the dimension of hell through sacrifice, bloodshed, and more specifically, the specific location that it has been done at. They don't pick these places at random. They do it, and it's all planned out. All of these factors that tie in, all have a factor to play in how war is held. And it's a battle between the things of hell and the things of which they are trying to either control or defend.
And as we were talking about before, we were, you know, illustrating the concept of interfaces between prime material reality and another one. The Heil works on a different layer of physics that we do not. And in order to open or create a key into the Heil, NSDAP forces had created, or the Ananeba had created devices known as die Glocke, or the bells. The bells were filled with plasma, and the plasma were the energy that would be able to become the active forces that would open up the rift between the stereoma, the Heil, and prime material reality. And we'll post pictures of these devices as well in the final video. So what are we talking about? We are talking about interface and energy.
Absolutely. This energy is needed because whatever kind of warfare that they are doing requires a tremendous amount of energy, much beyond our understanding. And the kind of energy that we believe is nuclear. It is a nuclear type of energy that they need. Now, Johnny and I, in our notes today, we are going to be also, you know, the thing is, we have had so many leading up events. Anybody that has done any kind of research into geopolitics or warfare that is coming, such as World War III, why is it that we've had things like Fukushima, we've had all of these nuclear accidents, wildfires, and etc., mainly nuclear stuff? The wildfire is a completely different thing, so I'll put that away. But we've had these nuclear incidents that have happened. I believe the reason why they do it is because they need that nuclear energy for the kind of warfare that they're doing that is covert, it's black ops, it's beyond black ops. It's completely beyond. It is completely occultic warfare of that of which we have no idea or have the ability to comprehend, other than possibly seeing it in movies, which they do tell you about this kind of stuff in movies. You know, I mean, I was telling Johnny that I was playing a video game called Wolfenstein a while back, and Wolfenstein, the game, was about a guy that was fighting against the Nazis, which they do mention the Ahnenerbe, and they were mentioning, you know, you had plasma weapons in that game. So the fact is, they have this kind of technology, and it revolves around nuclear physics. And so they need a lot of that stuff probably to make a lot of this weaponry work. So the question you have to ask yourself, and I'll wait till until we get to that subject because I don't want to jump ahead. But Johnny, we were discussing the leading up events of different events that have happened, that have led up since, 9/11 or previous to 9/11. But since we're discussing, World War II, from World War II, where do we go from there? What events do you have seen?
Immediately after the defeat of Hitler, commit suicide. Russia and the Allied forces just double team Germany. All is well. Everything's great again. And all we have left is Japan. What does America do? They release two incidences, two events of magnificent energy. We are talking about Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
We also had, before World War II, we had the Cold War era as well, which is about nuclear energy.
Well, of course. I mean, we actually started powering our lives, our very lives, with nuclear energy, through nuclear radioactive stations. But I feel that the invasion of the Heil was a failure, and as a result of that failure, on Earth, in the prime material reality, two gigantic releases of energy were detonated upon our world, and that basically created a signal to say, okay, let's begin the era of a new cycle. We're going to end Pisces. We're ready for it now. We're going to go into Aquarius. This, despite how horrendous and horrible those two nuclear detonations were, it wasn't enough. Okay, it doesn't happen overnight. The change of the cycle is not something that is immediate. It takes, like when you're washing your clothes, wash, rinse, repeat, spin, wash, rinse, repeat. And each cycle gets shorter and shorter and shorter, and eventually, each event has a smaller and smaller time frame between that. Eventually, the cycle changes. So,
The way it works is
like a spiral.
Yeah, exactly. How can I explain this? The way that it works is that the Earth works like a washing machine cycle. There's a beginning, there's a middle, and then there's an end phase. And this has happened throughout history many, many times. Terminator, the movie, brought this up, where it was about AI technology that blew up the whole world, and the whole thing started again. Or it didn't start again, but it blew up the whole world. But in the cycle sense, that's what happens. It starts all over again once the place is blown up. And that's how this world works. It's a never-ending cycle. When you have chaos and entropy, you have a situation where things repeat themselves in a chaotic manner, which are a fractal or fractured representation. So when you fracture a mirror, another part, it eventually was part of the whole. And then when you shatter it, or in the nuclear sense, you blow the place up, you have an instance where you have another offset or another fracture that happens. So another world is created. And what Johnny was saying is, through the ages of which they change, all the different cycles, different ages or different cycles.
We have 12 of them.
Exactly. The nuclear components that tie into the beginning and the end always have to do with the nuclear component, because for some reason, what happens in a nuclear bomb? It splits an atom, which means two other ones offset each other. They create a whole nother set of atoms. And so that is, again, tying into the quantum aspect, where you have different alternate, representations, different alternate dimensions. These are all representations and examples of which different ages and different cycles continually repeat themselves.
And once you go through 12 ages, go through another era.
Exactly.
So, and the only way to facilitate that, the only way to trigger that is through energy. Action, reaction, action.
Exactly. And so this leads us to present day time through these events. All the different wars. How many wars have we had, Johnny, do you know, that have involved nuclear possible warfare? We've had the Cold War. We've had Pearl Harbor. We've had the atomic bombings of Nagasaki. We've had, what else? Which ones? We've had at least 4, I think. And now
we've also witnessed the explosions of 3 Mile Island, and then we in one that was in '83, I believe, and then in 1986, yeah, it gets closer. We have the explosion of Chernobyl, and then the explosion of the space shuttle Challenger. So,
and not just warfare, but also just accidental instances like Fukushima.
So they say.
So they say, exactly. So, these events, these accidents, quote unquote, and these wars, there's always a nuclear component because they need that for the kind of warfare that they're doing, which is what we believe a hell warfare. It's not of this dimension, it's not of this world, and it is tying into a much bigger picture, which is the beginning of a new cycle. So now we are at present day time, 9/11. Now, there's a huge nuclear component to 9/11 as well. Why do you think that they call 9/11 ground zero? Ground zero is what happens when you drop an atomic bomb and the bomb lands on that land. That's called ground zero. So what is a zero? It's the zero is a cycle. A zero is the non-number in the beginning of the next number, which is 1. So it's a reset number. It starts all over again. You see, it's the reset, and now another one has begun.
Right. It's a period of flux. You don't actually have any nomenclature for it because technically it doesn't exist. The Arabics invented the numeral of 0. And, is it part of or not part of an age or an era? That's debatable. But it is a demarcation zone of change.
Absolutely. 9/11 was a huge inside for people in the know. It was a battle between 2 brothers. It was a um, huge event that marked not just the turn of an age, but a representation for those that rules history, for which they remember, and that for them they never forget because of how this place was created. And that's your nuclear component, and that is which they operate. And it's nothing to do with you. It's all inside information, and it is occultic, and it's hardcore evil.
Well, let's talk about the occultic symbology of 9/11. First of all, we've spoken about Paul Lawfully before, who was one of the architectural designers of the structure. He wanted to build 7 bridges between the 2 towers. His boss got really angry about it and summarily fired him. So what happens is, because we don't have those 7 bridges, we don't have those controlled voltages between the 2 tuning forks, we create this new structure of vibration and frequency. I know it sounds nuts, it sounds crazy, but without that bridge, that buffer between the two of them, that buttress, we are creating a frequency generator known as the World Trade Center. What happens when you blow it up? Well,
when you blow it up, you destroy the frequency, and basically what's happening is that you are no longer transmitting a signal that is creating the fabric of reality as you know it. It is the event that has ushered in what we believe the new age. The old signal has been lost, the new one has been established. What that signal is, we don't know. Is it even a signal? The point is that these frequencies are a tuning fork into which something is either being held back or something is being put in the position of to keep something in place. And when you destroy that gateway, what other realm are you opening yourself to? This is the quantum aspect of this equation.
And what's happening here too is because the gateway has been sundered, you are now allowing entropy to run unbridled. And that's exactly what's going to happen. It takes that energy of entropy to create a new cycle.
Yes.
But like I said, it doesn't happen overnight. You have to experience, in prime material time, a passage from the old age into a new one. So there is a period of transition, of interregnum. And that's exactly what we're experiencing right now. We have been since 2001.
Exactly. And so now that leads us to the question, since 9/11 happened, we now have the invasion of Iraq, another war. The one that they quote, the war that never ends, the endless war that's been going on forever. And since that day, we've had a leading up event to another nuclear conflagration. And several years later, now everybody's talking about North Korea and the nuclear component to that. And we also have Syria now at the table. Apparently, Russian troops were doing exercises in Syria for some reason. Everybody has their thoughts on what this could be. People are saying this is World War III. Yes, I believe there is definitely going to be another World War at some point. We don't know when. I think right now they might be just putting the chess pieces in place to see how it could go. These people operate by a script that they have done time and time again because cycles have come and gone time and time again. So they already know how this game works. Things might change a little bit here and there, but the bottom line is they know exactly how this is going to go down because they have a duty. We know, Johnny, who has that duty, but they have a duty to keep this place going, and they have a duty to make sure that through whatever means necessary, they keep this cycle going. And they have to do that through war, and they have to do that through the means of which they're doing now.
We see it every day now, like through nuclear accidents like Fukushima, which I just bought like a Japanese microphone. It might be radioactive.
Yeah. Might need to put it in like a biohazard suit and poke holes in it.
Oh, I'm already fucked.
Yeah.
But anyway, we also look at the energy and expenditure of plasma week after week after week, not just in America, but in Canada, and in Germany, and in Great Britain. you see these, mass shootings and, these sacrifices that are happening at an ever increasingly frequency. So, how, next week, how many mass shootings are we going to see on the news? Well, these are sacrifices. These are the letting of plasma. That expenditure of energy that is going on until we go into the next main event. What will that next main event be? Well, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, and I believe also through an author that Johnny and I read this guy's books, it's that of what did he the never-ending cycle. It is the manifestations of the realm getting ready for the realm basically entering in what we call war is hell. So the realm now entering in a lower part of hell, and through the chaos that begins to arise and the different dimensional shifts we believe that begin to happen, people begin to become more and more erratic. They begin to shoot up people, and that this is excluding the people that are what we come to understand as those that we call mass shooters. That is a whole nother category that has a whole nother understanding to all of this. But we're talking the average everyday person that doesn't make it on the news. There's an increase of violence. There is an increase of immorality. There's an increase of complete debauchery and reprobate minds. I believe this is due to the fact that when it heats up that we begin to enter when it heats up that we begin to enter in a different another war, the dimension begins to change. Chaos begins to unfold itself into the reality as part of this chaos, dark matter or whatever you want to call it. And that is the realms of hell beginning to open in certain aspects dimensionally. The chaos theory, the quantum entanglement begins to show itself more and more, and people begin to lose their grip on sanity as the dimension begins to prepare itself to go to hell or war. And so,
Were you speaking of Jordan Crawl?
Yes.
Yeah. Anybody listening to this, if you really want to understand about the change in cyclic dynamics, definitely read anything you can find by Jordan Grawl. But anyway, we are now, if you want to say, experiencing the change in the cycle because of events that have been triggered since 1945, and they're going to keep going at an ever increasing frequency, from here on out. What I'm worried about is what's next.
Yeah, what events could be leading up to a new war? I mentioned possible things with Syria and Russia and all those things, but what is it really? They just give that stuff to tell the general public. It has nothing to do with really any of that stuff. What is the real meaning behind it? Well, we probably won't ever know until way later, because that stuff's really kept under the lid. We know that it's probably going to be nuclear, as it always has been. Who knows? What we understand definitely for sure is that the demon or the demigod that runs this place is Lilith. We live in a realm of hell, and Lilith is the princess of hell. So everything has to do with the woman. This worship.
Well, we are passing the torch from the demigod Jehovah, or the demiurge, Yaldabaoth, whatever you want to call him, to his estranged wife Lilith. Once Jehovah was a force of order, whereas Lilith is a force of chaos.
Yes, exactly. And all of these wars and all of this chaos is that of which is behind or for Lilith, because she represents chaos. You have Jehovah, like Johnny said, that represents order, and you have chaos, order and chaos. And we have this battle between the two, and right now, chaos is winning in a lot of respects. But we also have some order, but it's not the kind of order people really like. It's more order, totalitarian type of order. It's more of a complete crackdown. The thing that we have to kind of understand is, and this is a question that I propose people to really think about regarding and pertaining to occult knowledge. If Lilith represents chaos and Jehovah represents order, who would you pick? Now, people would automatically say, well, I pick Jehovah because I don't like women being feminist assholes. But think about it really, what it really truly means beyond just the gender itself. If you're going to pick order, realize that there is a higher dimensional battle going on between these two factions. And maybe it might be that if you pick order, you're going to have a police state. But if you have a police state, you're not going to have chaos. If you were forced to pick between the two, really you shouldn't pick any, because they're both working for the same group in a lot of respects.
Well, you also have to understand, what is the difference between unmitigated chaos and liberty? I would. That's a great question, Element. I mean, would I want to live in a? If I only had two choices, would I want to live in a police state, or would I want to live in barbarism?
Yeah, if you were forced to pick between the two, what would you want?
But I was not able to pick a happy medium where,
Yeah.
we could talk it out. Let's see. I would say order. I would probably. Oh boy, I am the kind of guy that does not like to obey rules that I find inefficient, that I find nonsensical. You must eat a chocolate fudge sundae on Friday every day. I don't like chocolate,
Well, you see, the thing is, in the movie The Matrix, the red and blue pill was order and chaos. Neo chose chaos. That's what he chose. He didn't choose order. Order would have been going back to his normal life, living a boring existence. But it would have been ordered. But you see, with chaos, you get to experience something not of this normality. Because normality might mean that you're not going to get to learn anything, which is why you don't need to pick any, because it's a catch-22. But if you were forced to pick one, I would have to pick order, because, now, I don't mean in that context of the Matrix regards.
Sure.
In terms of prime-material reality, me just existing and going to work and going to the store, if I had to deal with that in chaos, I mean, I've seen enough police videos to know what chaos looks like, and I don't want to deal with that. So in that respect, in terms of just existing, not with anything above that, just me existing in life, being able to go to the store without being worried about being stabbed or having my things stolen from me in a chaotic world, I would choose order, because I want my shit and I want to be able to get it without having to worry about being brutally attacked. In that case, I would choose that.
Well, also look at the lost leader of chaos. Oh yeah, we live in a realm where you can be anything you want and do anything you want with whatever instruments you have at your disposal. But you also have to understand that the psychology of chaos is idiotic. It's insane. It's schizophrenic. So even though you've created this beautiful, efficient, wonderful device, this gorgeous machine, because it is in the realm of chaos, you may or may not be able to do anything with it, because chaotic law decides, we don't want this because it might bring order.
Well,
Okay.
the other thing is hell. Hell doesn't have order; it has chaos. So it's like it's either you want a hell world or you want an ordered world. That
Right.
still they're all part of hell, but at least there's certain parts of hell that have order to them, if you want to call it that. It's so limited in our understanding. I don't have the words to describe it, but complete and total chaos is quantum entanglement, which is hell, and that we already live in that, and the order is rapidly diminishing itself in some respects, and in other respects, it's clamping itself down. So it's a battle between the two, as we've said. So it's a question that you know we just as a fruit for thought. I'm not saying that this applies to anything that we have to make decision wise, but
Sure.
in some ways it does, because what we see manifesting in life with surveillance and you know 1984 Brave New World stuff going on, you have to understand what's going on is that it is a battle between the two. We really don't have a say in this battle, so it really doesn't apply to us, but it does apply to us in the sense of what are we going to do about it when we have to deal with it in the physical real world. That's
Element. Oh, you're right. And I'm going to take it from there. Element, you're right. We are inexorably moving toward an age of chaos, an era of chaos. There's nothing you can do about it. It's going to happen. But if you want to apply it physically on a day-to-day basis, take a look at it like this. Say you could work at two different companies and get the exact same salary. One company is run by a very orderly, dare I say, fascistic man. The other one is run by a loosey-goosey, hippy-dippy, chaotic woman. All right, so under the employment of this, bullheaded man, you know exactly what to do, what not to do. You understand the rules. If you break them, you're fired. If you follow them, you get to keep your job. If you follow them really well, you might get promoted. Now, while you are employed by Murphy Brown here, you don't really exactly know what the rules are because they're mutable. They constantly change. It goes with the wind. It goes with the flow of the water. If you are not in tuned to go with the flow of the wind or the water, you may get fired. But how do you know? Because there isn't any set standard of rules. At least the blowhard male that you're working for is establishing them in cement.
well another
The woman, on the other hand, is establishing them in frickin' rose petals, and who knows where the wind's going to blow them.
well another easy way of more solidifying this in real world terms is you got the political system, which is still part of the same coin. But let's say, for example, the president of the United States represents order. He wants things to be order, but you have to pay a price for order. If you want order, we can make that happen. But
Sure.
we might implement a surveillance 1984 police state because we're trying to fight Lilith. And we don't like her. We're trying to do our thing, and she's trying to do their thing. Lilith representing the
So
devil.
we build a wall, right?
So yeah, exactly. And that manifests itself in premature reality is a political narrative playing itself out in reality. So Donald Trump would represent order, and the Democrats or whatever would represent Lilith or chaos. Either which way, they both are in cahoots. And that's the big catch-22 if you had to pick, which I don't pick any of them because I don't like I don't like how things work here. But if you were forced to pick one, I'd pick order, because like Johnny said, chaos is throw throw some dandelions in the wind and wherever the hell they land, good luck. At least with order, it's like, no, we're going to make sure they land there. But in order for us to make sure they land there, we have to do all this other stuff. And you might not like it, and that might be worse for you than now, but you're not going to be living in chaos because of it. So it's a difficult thing to comprehend.
Well, we are actually speaking about this from a very biased perspective. We are both children of Scorpio. We are both very ordered, regimented people. Okay? Like, I leave for work at, 10 after 9 every day, like rote clockwork. I like that because I'm able to design my life the best way I can to get there. But under a chaotic time frame, doing that may not help you. Being able to show up on time doesn't mean anything because Murphy Brown decided that being on time is bad because it makes you a loser or a creep or whatever have you.
Well, and another thing too,
and you get no warning from it.
And I'm not going to get political because that's not what this channel is about, and I don't care about it anyway. But what is the whole thing? This is an example of order and chaos playing itself out. Chaos represents Lilith. Order, let's say, is represented, of course, as Jehovah. So what is the big thing that the president of the United States got, all these people, all these women, accusing him of sexual assault? Well, that's Lilith talking. They're for Lilith. They're for mom. Okay.
A Lilithian mindset will say, "You sexually assaulted me. Me too." And time's up and whatever other hashtag out there. But like with Aja Argento, who got accused of the exact same crime she was championing against, she said, well, it doesn't work that way with me because, vagina. Not even that. There is no reason. She doesn't even tell you a reason. That's the problem I have with chaos. You never know what you're going to get. A lot of you listeners out there are like, yeah, man, dope guns fucking into the streets. But do you really want that? Because you're never going to know where you stand. I would definitely rather, and I would be very reticent to take it, but I would take totalitarianism over barbarism.
Well, yeah, that's exactly the thing, and that's why I stress, if I was forced to pick a side, forced to,
we will.
I would choose a police state 1984 scenario. It's not like I said, if I was forced to. Okay, this isn't my personal belief. My belief is I don't choose either. And in many cases, you don't really have to choose in some respects, and in others you do. Because if you don't follow the law, you're going to jail. So you're forced to. But in that case, at least you don't have chaos. And again, if I was forced to, I would pick a police state where there's checkpoints and all of that versus chaos where it's like, fuck it, do whatever the hell you want. Because in that case, even in chaos, there is some order in the sense that you have gangs that control certain territories. But, that is still chaos because in some ways, if you don't do, see, that's the thing. That's why I say they're both part of the same coin, because if you don't do what the people in charge do, they'll kill you. And in the same way, if you do what order doesn't do, they'll kill you too. But at least they'll leave you alone more than the people that have chaos do. Because if the people that chaos do, they'll just run in your house, kill everybody, and steal everything.
Sure, of course they will. Now, see, here's the thing that many men, like, say, MGTOWs, are understanding that we are approaching an age of chaos. And we are learning to operate and live as best as we can under that rubric. So you are able to, I guess, in the best sense, isolate yourself and thrive in that scenario, that milieu, that you have no control over, that you have no control to change. But yeah, we are going to see that tomorrow, and tomorrow might be very soon.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't get to the final point here, but we're going to save that for another show because it's very interesting. We might do an addendum to this. But I think we covered some interesting food for thought today. And I think that, like Johnny said, we must do our best to exist with the circumstances that present ourselves in our world. And it's tough at times, but if you have the right information, which is what we're doing our best to do from our own opinion, it isn't a solidified in stone opinion, but it is there to present questions that we have to ask. And I think when you're living in a realm of chaos, you have to ask yourself as many questions to as many possibilities as you can so that you can live a more stable life in chaos. And that's up to you. That's where you have to choose what you decide and what you want. So I think that is all I can say about that. Johnny, is there really anything else you want to bring up?
Yeah, all you have to do is keep your perception, intuition, and your senses aware. Look for clues in your environment, and you'll be able to at least survive your very short life in a transitional age of order into chaos, from Pisces into Aquarius.
I guess
it's going to be hard, but you could do it.
One other thing is that don't get caught up in all of this stuff that's going on in the world because they want you to polarize yourself towards chaos. And that is why people are all up in arms like, I can't believe this happened, and look at this. And they're yelling and screaming and freaking out over everything going on. And that is trying to get you to be pulled to either chaos or order, metaphysically, physically, and in the political spectrum, who you vote for, what you believe in. It's just a fractal representation of a much higher thing going on. You got to try to maintain a center, which is your own form of order. Now, I'm not saying that is in terms of like a Luciferian viewpoint, because that's not what that is at all. That's a whole nother thing, and that's something that I'm not for at all. But it is the sense that you have to make your own decisions for yourself. Because if you understand that this world is two opposing forces fighting for dominion of what cycle gets to run in what time at what point and who gets to run it, if you can understand that, then you will be much more adept in knowledge to not be polarized and be tricked into falling from one side or the other just because of what they say and get emotionally invested like a lot of feminists and a lot of Jezebel-spirited women do, because that's chaos, and their mindset is chaos. So I think that's all I have to say.
All I have to say is, everybody listening in, I want you to have a great midnight.
Yep, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it. Hope everybody has a good rest of the week, and we'll catch you soon.